In the shadowed corridors of early Christian memory, where the line between history and hagiography blurs like mist over the Tiber, we encounter Eleutherius, the 12th successor to Peter. His name, drawn from the Greek Eleutheros, whispers of freedom, of a spirit unbound, perhaps a fitting emblem for a man who bridged the perils of empire and the fervour of revelation in the late 2nd century. Born around 130 in the modest Greek town of Nicopolis, in the rugged heel of Epirus, Eleutherius emerged not from senatorial pomp, but from the quiet weave of provincial life, son of one Habundius, whose name fades into obscurity like so many others in that era's fragile records. Imagine, if you will, the world into which he stepped as deacon in the Roman Church. It is the 160s, under the philosophic gaze of Marcus Aurelius, whose meditations ponder stoic endurance, even as his edicts sporadically unleash the empire's latent fury against the followers of the Nazarene. Eleutherius serves under Anicetus, that Syrian-born bishop, whose brief tenure wrestled with the Paschal controversies, those heated debates over when to celebrate the Lord's resurrection, a quarrel that pitted Eastern quartodecimans against Roman observance. Hegesippus, the Palestinian chronicler who wandered to Rome in those very years, recalls Eleutherius not as a towering figure, but as a faithful attendant, a deacon whose hands likely broke the bread in house churches huddled against the forum's grandeur. From Anicetus, he carries forward into the reign of Sota, another brief pontiff whose letters of solace to the persecuted in Corinth hint at a church growing bolder, its tendrils reaching beyond the 7 hills. And then, circa 174 or 177, the dates shift like sand in Eusebius's chronicles. Eleutherius ascends. Sota has passed, perhaps in the shadow of Marcus's final persecutions, those spasmodic outbursts that claimed martyrs in Lyons and Vienne. Eleutherius, now in his 40s, takes the cathedra amid a Rome still scarred by Nero's ghosts and Domitian's echoes, yet pulsing with a Christian vitality that defies the odds. His pontificate, stretching some 15 years to 189, unfolds under Commodus, that erratic son of the philosopher-emperor, whose gladiatorial excesses masked a surprising tolerance. Commodus, they say, spared the Christians more than his father harried them. His reign, from 180 onward, offered a fragile pax in which the church could breathe, consolidate, and contend with its own inner tempests. Ah, but what tempests they were! For Eleutherius, the air was thick with the scent of prophecy and peril, chief among them the rise of Montanism from the arid hills of Phrygia. Montanus, that self-proclaimed mouthpiece of the Holy Spirit, the Paraclete, had burst forth a decade or so earlier, around 170, preaching not mere reform, but a new dispensation, a final age of the Spirit, heralded by visions, ecstatic utterances, and rigorous discipline. Montanus's prophetesses, Prisca and Maximilla, spoke in tongues that captivated the fervent. I am the Father, and the Son, and the Paraclete, Montanus thundered, promising Jerusalem's descent to Pepusa, that humble Mysian village. It spread like wildfire through Asia Minor, leaping to Gaul and even Rome, drawing the intellectually restless and the spiritually starved. Here was no dry scholasticism, but raw pneumatic vigour, a call to purity, to fasting, to the imminence of judgment. The church in Lyons, that Gallic outpost forged in Greek fire and Roman steel, felt the blaze acutely. In 177, amid a persecution that devoured its bishop Pothinus and the young Blandina, tossed to bulls and bared to beasts, the confessors from their prisons penned letters eastward. One went to the churches of Asia and Phrygia, urging discernment, another to Eleutherius himself, born by the young Irenaeus, future scourge of heresies, who arrived in Rome dusty from the road, his missive outlining the Montanist claims. What did Eleutherius make of it? The sources tease us with ambiguity. Tertullian, that brilliant North African who would later embrace the new prophecy, claims the Pope's initial letters were conciliatory, even affirming the prophet's authenticity. Words of peace, perhaps, to a movement that echoed the apostolic charisms. Yet by the end, Eleutherius drew back, his stance hardening against the excesses, the unyielding asceticism, the fatalistic eschatology that brooked no compromise with the world's slow mending. This was no mere squabble over dates or diets. It touched the soul of the Church's self-understanding. In an age when bishops like Eleutherius shepherded communities still clandestine, still suspect, Montanism posed a siren call to the marginalised promising empowerment through frenzy where hierarchy seemed stodgy, institutional. Eleutherius, in his measured Roman way, opted for the via media, the balanced governance of episcopal order, over unchecked ecstasy and unlettered enthusiasm. It was a choice that echoed Ignatius of Antioch's earlier pleas for unity under the bishop, a thread in the tapestry of Catholicity that would tighten in the centuries ahead. One senses in this the quiet gravitas of a man who had seen deacons martyred and house churches raided. He guarded the deposit of faith, not with edicts, but with discernment, a pastoral prudence that Irenaeus would later codify in his Adversus Heresies. Yet Eleutherius's legacy whispers beyond these doctrinal skirmishes. The Liber Pontificalis credits him with a decree of gentle liberty, that no food created by God should be rejected by the faithful, provided it be rational and humane. Ut nulla esca, a Christianis repudiaretur, words that strike at the lingering shadows of Judaizing tendencies, those holdovers from the apostolic era when some clung to Mosaic purity amid Gentile influx. Was this Eleutherius's innovation, or a reaffirmation of Peter's vision in Acts? It echoes earlier papal wisdom, reissued for a church now majority Gentile, freeing the Eucharist from Levitical chains. In this too his name, Eleutherius the Free, resonates, a quiet assertion of Christian liberty against legalistic fetters, much as Paul had thundered against the weak and strong in Rome itself. And then there is the tantalizing tale of Britain, that fog-shrouded isle at empire's edge. Medieval chroniclers, from Bede to the annalists of Wales, spin a yarn of Lucius, a British king, perhaps a chieftain of the Silures or a Romano-British potentate, who dispatched envoys to Rome around 156, beseeching Eleutherius to render his realm Christian. The Liber Pontificalis embellishes, Lucius, son of a forgotten line, yearns for baptism. The Pope complies, sending missionaries who plant the faith in Londinium soil. Fugatus and Damos, they are named in later lore, or Elfan and Medwi in Welsh tradition, returning with croziers and bells to consecrate churches at Llandaff and beyond. How we long to believe it! A bridge from Rome to the Druids' groves, prefiguring Augustine's later mission. Yet sober scholarship, peering through the mists of 9th century Nennius and 12th century Geoffrey of Monmouth, unmasks the legend. The dates clash. Lucius's plea, if real, predates Eleutherius by years, attributed to Evaristus in some accounts. No contemporary trace in Eusebius or Irenaeus. It blooms in the age of Alfred, when English monks sought ancient pedigrees for their isle's faith. Still, the story endures, a pious fiction that reveals our human hunger for continuity, for Rome's maternal reach even to barbaric shores. Eleutherius becomes, in this myth, the unwitting architect of Albion's cradle Christianity, a reminder that history's truths often hide in aspiration's folds. His days drew to a close on May 24, 1890, in the 10th year of Commodus's caprice. Whether by natural death or the empire's whim, some traditions murmur martyrdom, though the evidence thins like autumn light. Eleutherius was laid to rest on the Vatican Hill, near Peter's humble tomb, in a cemetery that would one day yield to Constantine's basilica. His relics wandered in later piety to San Giovanni della Pigna by the Pantheon, then in 1591 to Santa Susanna, at the behest of Sixtus V's sister, Camilla Peretti, who perhaps saw in this ancient Greek a mirror to her brother's reforming zeal. Reflect then on Eleutherius as a steward in the quiet revolution of the Church's becoming. In an era when Christianity was less a monolith than a mosaic, Gnostics peddling secret knowledges, Marcionites excising the Hebrew scriptures, and now Montanists chasing the Spirit's whirlwind, he held the centre with a freedom tempered by fidelity. His pontificate, longer than many that flanked it, allowed the Roman See to mature, its letters traversing the Mediterranean like epistles of a family elder, binding disparate communities in shared memory and worship. What endures is the humanity of it all. A deacon from Nicopolis, navigating emperors' whims and prophets' cries, decreeing bread for the hungry, and dreaming, perhaps, of isles beyond the Pillars of Hercules. In our own fractured age, when old certitudes fracture anew and the Spirit's winds howl through digital divides, Eleutherius bids us remember that true freedom lies not in ecstasy's abandon, but in the disciplined love that feeds all at one table. He is invoked on May 26th, a saint among saints. His feast a pause to ponder the unsung bishops, who, like him, kept vigil while the world slumbered. In the grand procession of Peter's heirs, he stands as a luminous footnote, whispering that even in obscurity the Church's heart beats on, free, honest, unbound.